Hello, welcome to another glorious read. I am your host, Aspen Sage. Let's get into it. Last week I did not get to do a review, and this is why. Because I just finally finished book 2, The White King's Favorite. What a ride, I will tell you. It was a good book, even though the writing was different and it was more descriptive than the last book. It was still good, and a lot happened. It was a roller coaster of a ride near the end. I don't regret reading it. It did take me longer. It was a bigger book. However, it wasn't like the first one. A lot of the same characters from the first book do get spoke about in this one. I know last time I was talking about Cecilia, or Ceci, being this princess from the Dragon Empire coming to the Eastern Kingdom to qualify and compete for King Ashen's hand. Obviously, Ashen and Cecilia had this past together, and there was a mistress named Giselle. There was so much going on in this book, and it was just so overlapping, but it wasn't bad. It was more like there was so much going on. To basically sum it up for the rest of the book was nobody was happy that Cecilia was there, even though she is not part of the Eastern Kingdom. They kept calling her a foreigner. She did a lot to help the people, including becoming allies with a lot of clans who actually didn't even want to really compete for that said hand for the king. So you have ladies like Neptune, or Nana, and as they call her in the book, who've become really good friends with the princess, and Lady Tessandra, or Tessa, who's Cecilia's cousin, Lady Bassett, and Lady Ashera. There are so many of these smart, intelligent young women that know that even though they're competing for the king's hand and they really don't want the position, that Cecilia is the ultimate person that deserves to be queen. So these young ladies of these lord families have literally became allies with the princess. They are helping. It even comes to a point where there is a severe rainstorm, and Cecilia starts wondering that the people on the outer castle, or the outer part of the capital, are not safe. She's like, are there drain holes? Are there this? She starts even concerning of these people who are poor, these people who are mercenaries, steal, that are trying to get into the capital. And she's like, we have to do something. Even though it's not our duty, it's not our place. She goes, I know I'm just a foreign princess. She goes, we need to do something. So her, Tessa, Nana, Sab, who is Nana's brother, they all go to help the situation with these people in the outer capital so that they don't drown. During this process, she gets called in by the lords and the king that there's one group member, or this one lord, who's Lord Yebek, who wants to eliminate the princess. He does not want the princess to be even competing for the king's hand. And one of the things that they had to compete for was they had to be celibate. They can be anything but virgins. And unfortunately, the night before, as she was seen sneaking off with a man, Cecilia is no longer a virgin because the king has claimed it. With this being said, they're trying to use her as an excuse that she should not compete for the king's hand. Well, that goes against her favor. She goes, it is only fair in my defense that why should the women competing for his hand have to remain virgins, but yet the king does not, where he has his own mistress on his side. And even Ashen's like, ooh, I deserve that one. Well, it was quite funny. So And she goes, and it was the king who claimed it. So therefore, I am not exempt from this competition that I will win, by the way. So Cecily basically has turned into this very confident woman against these lords, even with her stutter. And she basically left, and after a vote of people saying, you know what, the princess is all for it. We agree the princess is fine. So Ashen goes after her, and she's like, I'm going to help your people outside the wall. And he goes, oh, okay, well, yeah, I can come too. And he doesn't even realize how bad it actually is until he shows up. There are people that are starting to become rebellious. They're upset. They're worried they're going to drown. They should be just led into the capital. And the king refuses. It comes down to Cecilia basically stepping up and becoming this leader. She basically tells the king part of the wall has to come down. If not, these people are going to drown. There's people getting sick. She is so smart. She's like, all right, we need hot food. So she gets the Doros clan, who's Nana's clan, to make these fish baguettes. And these fish baguettes are so warm, and you hear them throughout the story how delicious they are. The Doros clan is more than happy to provide hot food for the people, the poor people, the people that are trapped. And because these poor people are trapped, they are cold, they're worried about their children. So, like I said, they're becoming more rebellious. But after they realize Cecilia is becoming more of a queen-like figure, she is telling Lady Bassett that we need clothes, because she's an expert crafter. They're like, we need tents, we need fabric. She goes, absolutely, we got these a whole bunch of fabric that are not bought by the higher class that would be perfect for what you need. So her and her tribe go and do this. They make a pop-up tent. She goes to Lady Ashera and says, your people know medicine. We need a hospital. Some of these people are getting sick. So they make a pop-up hospital and stuff. And Ashen and the dragons and also some of the guards are breaking part of the wall, even though he doesn't want to. The water floods out. The water has gone down. And it turns into this whole, like, hey, the king is actually on our side kind of thing. So by Cecilia stepping up and being this leader and queen, even though she's a foreign princess, she's opened their eyes to, hey, the king is actually a good guy, not this stoic, cold person like his father was. He actually cares about his people. Now, also by this is being done, Yabek becomes more of a problem. So they have realized that there's this next candidates dinner kind of thing, but it's in Arita. Well, during this, they come to find out that there are traitors among them. Lord Yabek actually wants to get rid of the White King, mostly because of now Cecilia's a rival, because of the dragons and stuff, and she's a foreign princess, and she's just a stupid girl. He's hoping that the king would marry one of his own daughters. So it basically started with a competition. Cecilia used her voice, no different than Cassandra did with her voice in the beginning of first book, where she sung and the fish used to swim around her, and it was eerie and very melody. Same that Cecilia did, but she used her voice to shake the stalagmites on the roof of this cave that's arena. And they realized that they could have all been killed just by her voice alone, without a dragon's help. And they were like, oh, she's a monster. Well, Yabek's niece challenged Cecilia to a sword fight. Well, of course, Cassandra's like, no, I'll stay at her place. That's me. And so I said, no, I'll do it. I'll prove her wrong. It became such a bloodbath. We're in the point that Cecilia wasn't even the one to get hurt. Not until they went for her throat, which triggered the memory of the torment that she had, and it became basically her wanting to kill this woman until Ashen stepped in. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, Cecilia breaks down and says she doesn't want to do that again. She never wants to pick up another sword. Unfortunately, she eats her words too soon. The young lord's niece dies, just drops dead. Everybody's like, oh, the princess killed our candidate, so she's got to be, revoked from the competition. They're like, she didn't even kill her. She literally she didn't even drop dead from her injuries, because Cecily's like, I gave her no wounds that would be fatal. They would have been painful, but never fatal. So then all of a sudden, Cassandra realizes that that's why the Yvette tribe wanted Cecily to fight the candidate, is because one of the things was get away with murder. Unfortunately, the king's there. He parts her anyway. He says, no, absolutely not. That's not how it works. Cecily won. It was a draw. Your candidate died for another reason. So basically it became an uproar. The Yvette and his clan has basically made this whole idea that that's fine. We're going to get rid of the king. It's a whole rebellion. They find one of his adopted stepbrothers that was supposed to be king to come basically fight him and whatnot. The king is gravely injured, and Giselle, who is the mistress, is also turned against the king, and it's just a whole cluster where even that Giselle actually follows Cecilia and Tessa, who have slammed with Nana and the king to safety to his cave until they realize that they're blocked by Yvette's people, and Giselle follows them, and then there's this red dragon, and the story of how Giselle gets this red dragon. So my theory was Giselle was originally a dragon tamer or something like that. She is actually the daughter of one of the princesses from the first book, who married a rain tribesman, who had a son. The son died, and now she is stuck with his dragon, Jin. So she claims that it's her dragon now. Of course, Cecilia has to fight this dragon, and then Nana is very explosive. She's very bright, so she's able to create an explosive to trap them in that said cave. Unfortunately, the king's gravely injured. Tessie is trying to save him, and then, of course, Cassandra is trying to figure her way out of the cave. Nana is trying to help with gathering herbs and food, and Giselle is just pouting. Her dragon's hurt on the other side from the explosion. Like I said, a lot goes on. It does come down to just randomly Tessie's older brothers show up, Dora and Cassian, and they show up with just one of his dragons, and they save the princesses. Of course, Dorian falls hard for Nana. He's like, I want that girl. That girl's mine. Something about, like, they say, like, the dragons just know who they're meant to be with and who they become with. So this wrecking ball of an older brother who destroys everything just falls for sweet Nana, who's intelligent. It basically turns into a full silver out war during the end of the book. The king gets saved thanks to Cecilia and her older brother. Once he comes to, Cassian and Ashton have a talk of why actually he had to leave the capital and stuff like that, because they're like, every day we were fighting assassins to keep you safe, because they kept sending assassins over the wall to make sure you were dead, to kill you off. And of course, when we found you with Cecilia, we knew that neither of you were safe. You were both stupid. That's why we sent you away. My father knew it was time for you to fight your own battles. So they became an understanding. Of course, Cassian gave some ash in his blood, because dragon blood heals. And it becomes this hidden clan who's been watching from the shadows, unsure how they were going to be, blah, blah, blah. And they believe the dragons are gods and whatnot. I think they're named the Cheshi tribe or clan. So they decide that they're going to help the king and everything. They're going to fight the battle. They find out that all the people that were left, including Sabil, who was Tessa's boyfriend, as she claims, and Nana's brother, is going to be executed for treason. The black people are trying to take over the capital. They're trying to take over the kingdom. So basically, it comes to Ashen, Cassandra, and her brothers, the Chessy people, Nana. They're all going, and of course, the princess is all going to fight and save the kingdom and take back what they are, including Ashen. He's going to reclaim his throne, even though he's injured. It becomes a full-on battle, even though Tessie says, Cassandra, Cecilia said that she would never pick up another weapon. She does fight with swords and stuff. They do end up saving the captives. They do end up fighting back to the castle. Ashen faces his adopted brother that was crushed by a stalagmite and magically survived. I think it was just... the way the author described him sitting on the throne, I was pretty sure he was just a corpse, but until he moved. So Ashen has to face his brother and Yvette, but Jin the dragon shows up, and he's going after Cecilia, and she knows if Cecilia is being attacked by Jin, then Giselle is still involved, and she has to deal with the mistress. The mistress is mad because she's being thrown away. She's always been treated poorly, blah, 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 blah. It comes down to a down to battle, and it was close to Cecilia losing until magically Cece came back. Cece is Celestia's dragon that was thrown into the lake at the Imperial castle or empire, and they thought she was dead. So for her to come back, it was amazing, and she's a lot different. She was a lot bigger. She is neither a water dragon nor an earth dragon. She is kind of like a snow dragon. It's kind of neat. Cece basically saves her owner. It comes down to Giselle basically committing suicide to basically save Jin, and basically so she didn't have to go back and relive something, even though Cecilia gave her the opportunity to. So she's happy to have Cece back. Cecilia goes back to save the king. The king is barely hanging on, but he did to beat his adopted brother. But now it was just Lord Quebec, and it was just Cece and Cecilia to face the Lord. In the end, the king was the one to finish him. Why? Cassandra, Nana, her older brothers, and Zabale were able to, along with the other tribes, to render the streets, save the bridges, make sure people were safe, saving who they can, distinguish the people, and even the royal guards that went against them. So, in the end, I know, like, a lot happened. It did turn into, okay, we gotta rebuild the kingdom. Cecilia and Ashen are basically committed to their relationship to each other. It did turn into Jordan's love for Nana. He's like, yep, I'm going to be the best husband ever. And she's just like, oh dear. And like, she's like, you're so destructive. But they're like, we just watched you blow up a house. And she goes, yeah, I did. So they're like, oh my God, both of them are awful together. It comes down to Cecilia having children. The war god, I was hoping for this. The war god and Ashen made up. They were very happy to see each other. Of course, what I love through the end of the story is after the war is done, and literally it was just a few like moments after, the grandmother. The grandmother in the first book was hilarious, and now her coming back in this book and being this royal dragon lady, like she's just like, oh, look at this mess, and like she's looking at the king, and she's like, oh yes, young man, and she's like loving everybody. She's just so funny. And then like the Chessy tribe, who basically was like hiding in the shadows and stuff, and be like, we protect the dragons, you know, they're the gods. And like the old woman looked at them and she goes, I despise people like you who completely hide in the darkness. She goes, dragons can be tamed. And she's like, I know, I've done it. Not even knowing prior, Jin, who has lost Giselle and is frozen in ice, who is causing all these problems, is all alone. And Cecily is like, just like, I feel bad for him. He's young and he doesn't have anybody. And basically the grandmother is like, oh, well, I guess I can take care of him. It's not the first time I've raised somebody else's dragon. And she just walks up to the dragon. She's like, cry, can you release him, baby? And then she looks at the red dragon. She's like, no problem from you. Like, scolding him like a child. And he's like, oh. And it's even funny that Nana has adapted this personality when she's facing her boyfriend's dragon, who is basically just as destructive as he is. So it's a really nice story. It's basically the capital has grown. They have extended the trade routes with the Empire. Ashton and Celestine has like 4 kids now, or 3 kids, 2 daughters and a son, and they're already talking about a 4th one. It's just a really nice, wholesome story. It's nice to see Ashton's growth from this enraged, angry king to like, you know, I've looked at the world wrong, and Cecilia opened my eyes to it. And from Cecilia going from a stuttering, nervous girl to now in full talking queen, because now she has Cece back, and Cece has grown, and Cassandra has come this brutal woman who rather wield a sword to going, I want to cook for my family and I can't even cook. And like somebody was like, why don't you go see your mother? Why don't you go ask her? And she goes, my mother? And he's like, yes, your mother. She could help. And you're both too stubborn to be the first to ask. So she's like, fine. She goes, I'm doing this for our future kids. In the end, I guess Ashlyn and Cecily get married. Cassandra gets engaged to Sabea. It's just a really nice, wholesome ceremony. I'm glad to see the kingdom have grown. Like I said, the writing in this book was a lot different. There was a lot that happened at the end. But it was a good story. I give it a solid 3.5. Like I said, the writing got me. And I know it was a longer book, being 669 pages. But it was still a good story. I like the story. I will still say that the first one, The War God's Favorite, is my first favorite book out of the series. Jenny Fox still did a wonderful job on this one. Spice is not as descriptive as previous books. I definitely give it like a 2.5. Like, there was still some spice to it. There was like 3 or 4 scenes where Ashton and Ceci got together and did the wham bam thank you ma'am. Obviously because they had kids. But it was more of a it wasn't as spicy as I've read before. It was a very wholesome story. Basically it was 2 lovers coming back together and growing together and becoming a new empire. So it was definitely a very wholesome story. I think it was just basically 2 young lovers coming back together. And it was beautifully done. So I guess some of my theories were answered from the last time. Giselle was definitely had a dragon of her own, finding out that she was a princess's daughter, and her father was a range tribesman. I was glad that Nana did not become the evil person, because I would have been very upset. Finding out that there was traitors, that the king was going to battle for his own kingdom, and that I was glad that the war god and him got together and made up. So, like I said, it's a very good book. 2.5 on the spice reading, 3.5 on the reading scale. It was still a good book. I wish it didn't take almost 4 weeks to get through. For some reason, I read as much as I could. I even had to switch it to my Kindle to read it. So I had time to read it or listen to it. So I could actually not just get through the book because I've been busy, but just the fact so I wouldn't lose where I was. It did take me longer to read than I wanted to. But since this book is done, there is another one. I don't know if I'm going to touch it yet, but I definitely know the next book that I'm going to read is Convict's Conviction, and that is part of the Skeleton Crew, the Body Count series, with Aaron's Obsession, Connor's Acclaim, and Rodian's Revenge. Those books, it's definitely some of my favorite reads. So I have high hopes for Convict. I felt bad for him the end of the last book, So I'm really excited to hear his story. But that is all for today. I hope everybody enjoys the rest of their Saturday or Sunday or whatever day it is for you by the time you listen to this. I hope that you have a fantastic day. I hope you do something nice for yourself. Get yourself a treat. Give yourself a reward. Remember, even if you're an adult, you deserve a that a boy or that a girl and get a sticker or a new book or something new to do, a new craft maybe. But thank you for listening in, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye bye.